Thank you. I'll take that. The report is read. I just draw your attention to two parts. One is the evidence that we've moved into really a joined up process for communication and working with other agencies. So quite committed to ensuring good information gets out, but that we share information and that the various agencies work together in terms of making sure that we've got the same messages and not bombarding with different issues. So lots of community meetings, newsletters that are joined up, particularly around, most recently, the Port Hills and the flooding. And the second part I'll just draw your attention to, which you would have seen, was the response to the issue raised from the Hagley Ferrymead Community Board and the issue of stopping streets. So Peter Mitchell here can answer any questions that you might have around that.
So, has anyone got any questions? Jimmy?
One question regarding to the IANZ, the 17 corrective actions, council response, whether before to reply to them, whether bring to the council table, give us fully understand how to respond to
There are 9. There are 9 corrective actions.
And some strong recommendations.
Yeah.
So you'd like something brought to the council?
Yeah, just want to know.
We can certainly provide you with more detailed information. Most of them were around issues of our documentation and making sure that was consistent across the various areas of decisions and how those decisions are made, and the issue of meeting our statutory timeframes, which in the face of exponentially increasing applications has been challenging.
Yeah, I think the reason I sort of corrected that is that the 9 corrective actions and 8 strong recommendations, that's what we're dealing with now. The 17 corrective actions was the last time that we had an assessment from IANZ that was the beginning of the process that led to the council losing its accreditation last year. So we've gone from 17 corrective actions down to 9 after a first principle review, essentially, because we're starting from scratch. We're being assessed by IANZ as if we have never been a building consent authority before. So actually, I think that the 2 things that I would just note from the exit interview that I attended was that at the previous exit interview that again started the process that led to losing accreditation, there were no elected members there and the chief executive wasn't there either, nor was the head of the department that was under review. This time we had the lot. We had the chief executive, the mayor, the chair of the regs consent and the deputy chair, and we had the senior management leadership team of the department itself. So I think that, and the message that we got from IANZ was, even from the outset of their visit, was that the cultural change was palpable. They went from being an organisation that was placed in a room where people were sent to an opportunity to freely range throughout the department, speak to anyone, and get a very favourable reaction in terms of the way people were so open and wanting to be able to be assessed. And I think they left with a very clear understanding that both from a governance and management point of view, we understand why accreditation is so vital to the organisation, but we actually want to not just tick the boxes, but we actually want to be delivering an excellent service. And I think that was quite a significant change from last time. Tim?
Just following on from that, Jimmy, the 9 corrective actions our staff were aware of, IANZ acknowledged that. So it's just working together on the process, and as Ian said, our staff have done an amazing amount of work, and they've got to a great spot. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the bar is high and needs to be, but is there a sense in which there's an appreciation of the earthquake, given and especially, that your comment, Carleen, about that exponential growth which we face, and we know this being on the consent committee, is IANZ really treating Christchurch any differently? And might it be reasonable to do that? There's been an investment of $10 million in a Crown manager.
Yeah, I did raise that because, and in the governance role, because, and the response was that they can't legally move outside the framework that they have, and there are statutory deadlines. I have raised it personally with the Minister, and I've also raised it in the exit interview in order for MB to be aware that, that although we were improving our timeframes, there was this potential, sort of tsunami of applications, that could be unleashed at any time. And so the number of applications were going up, but our record was improving. It is not perfect by any means. They have to judge against the criteria that they have. They can't make an exception for us as a building consent authority. They don't have the power to do that. But we are certainly engaging with MB and ultimately the Minister if we were to get to that. But I think that if IANZ are satisfied that we are on that trajectory and that we have the processes in place where we can, sort of step up if we need to, pull in additional resource if we need to, use other building consent authorities if we need to, then I think that will be enough to meet the test. Dave?
Yes, look, I'd just like to probably reinforce Leanne's comments. Probably the most difficult requirement to overcome will be that statutory one of meeting 20 days turnaround. And I think the pertinent thing to note is that although our volume is increasing and our ability to process within the statutory time frame is also increasing, we are likely to probably peak at the maximum sort of number early next year, about April, May next year. And I think as long as we keep closing that gap as we reach our peak, we will actually satisfy IANZ on that matter. And hopefully, I think, as Leanne said, we have the capacity to utilise some external BCAs to a greater level, and I think building on that, we will get very close to, if not exceeding, the time limits. And I think once we get over that hump next year, we'll obviously be in a much better space to continue meeting on a continual basis that statutory regulation of complying the 20-day turnaround. So I'm very comfortable with the work that's being done in the unit at the moment, and reinforcing that attitude from IANZ that there is definitely a great culture change within the unit, and things are moving along very well. So hopefully in the next few months we'll see a shortening up of that and gradually meeting those required times.
Great. Phil?
I'd just like to thank you, Carleen, for the financial information you've given us on the earthquake recovery costs. And it's clearly significant that the year spend is $318 million below the budget. And I think I've indicated to you that I'd be interested in seeing all of our capital projects I guess out for several years, taking it and looking at what cost savings we may be able to make from carefully looking at the carry forward aspect of our budget.
Yes, so those cost savings are a result of having in the budget projects which haven't been started, such as the Metro Sports Centre. So they're not cost savings in a sense, but obviously committed in future years. So that's the information you want?
It's probably particularly on our own capital projects.
Thank you.
Yanni?
Thank you. I was just interested in the Avonside Gloucester Street intersection. I think there's some real areas of concern that the horizontal infrastructure group, whoever's making these decisions is allocating funding to do amenity enhancements without a report coming to council as well. So previously we had a report come to council, I think it was about $1 million extra of funding that was requested, and we were told that it was because it was betterment. Now we're being told that actually that funding was approved just through that internal group without any call on council. Now, given our financial pressures, I think it does raise quite a serious concern over how we're controlling what expenditure SCIRT and the partners are putting towards the horizontal infrastructure. Because if this is seen as a priority over fixing our water pressure mains, which aren't being fixed, I have real concerns. So thanks for the report on this one. So the first question is really what financial prudence are we overlaying with our current financial situation and what SCIRT are actually doing, where they are actually, appears to be, adding significant costs. And the second question was, in light of the fact that we now have to go up for consultation, which is good, why is the SCIRT project happening ahead of that? Where's the synergy between?
Sorry, which page is this the SCIRT
Page
thing
clause
referred to?
5. There's no page on
That's
the agenda, but it's the Avonside Gloucester Street
Yeah, yeah.
proposed intersection changes.
What part are you referring to with the SCIRT stuff though?
Well,
Where's that in here?
yes, it is.
No, but where? I just want to see.
So I understand that.
Funding model. I am advised with regard to the funding model under clause 4 for this proposed intersection layout change, the operations group would fund the proposed changes from within existing operational budgets or horizontal infrastructure. So that's like about, I think it was about $750,000. And previously we had a report asking us to authorise that expenditure. We didn't do that. It now appears to have been allocated. And I just really wanted to understand, what controls we have in place. But I also wanted to understand, given that we have to go out for consultation over the intersection, which I do believe is the right thing to do, why the SCIRT project that's part of it is already underway. It seems like we should actually be going out for consultation at the start rather than halfway through.
So I think there are three things there. One is that we have been talking about ensuring that when we repair a piece of road or something like a bridge, that we make sure that we coordinate all the work that needs to happen instead of having, a piece of road dug up 3 or 4 times. So hence the reason that these sorts of things are considered together. Peter will respond to the issue about consultation and Jane around the funding. Thank you.
I think at the moment, in terms of the concern that Sarah Templeton expressed to you was, of course, the board have been advised clearly, and as you'll see there, the seminar agenda, they were going to go to consultation in August as a result of the council resolution. As I said in the report, I ensured that in fact no further work was being done either by SCIRT or by council staff until I put the information together and came back to the council. I think at the moment, my understanding is, and Jane will be able to comment further on this, is the staff are now in effect assessing afresh in light of the advice around the need for the public process in terms of what is the best solution for that particular intersection in the bridge. But clearly, I think fundamentally, as I say at the end, they need to come to the community board and have that conversation with the board members at the very least in terms of the various options that are open to them.
The work on the bridge hasn't stopped, has it?
Sorry, the work on the bridge is, the bridge has been repaired, you're correct, in terms of the mid-2015 date.
Yeah,
yes.
which is kind of like you've got 2 projects. The only reason the other project was happening was because of the bridge. And now you've got one project that's been put on hold and the other project's going ahead and we haven't done the community consultation. I think what it raises for me is, and our board will be raising this, is we're actually at a stage now because we're so frustrated with the lack of synergy with the SCIRT repairs and what the community aspirations are and what the local board view may be, that we actually want the detailed designs of every project that SCIRT are doing in our ward coming to our board before it's committed to, so that we can actually approve it like we used to do with normal road reconstruction or repairs, so that we can actually at an early stage identify clearly what the issues are and actually have a conversation with local communities over what the impact of the repairs are going to be and what the final design is going to look like.
I might ask Jane to respond to that.
Just to be clear on the giving the figure of
So I'm not sure that there's... I don't think it's possible for every single SCIRT project to go to community boards. It's just not possible. I mean, in terms of the extent of the work that they have to do, it's...
Road reconstruction, it might be it's just for road reconstruction, where the top is actually changing.
Where the direction of traffic and things like that.
Where they're actually doing road renewal and construction, that's probably the critical one, where they're designing elements of the road when they're putting it back. So they're either doing it back as it was, or they're doing it in a different way. But that was probably the area where you actually have the most discretion around doing things that are not necessarily more expensive, but in a different way. But
Well, yeah, I think where there's major change there is. I mean, yeah. I mean, I'm sort of kind of reluctant to say that that's the best approach right across the board when I don't actually know the scale of what you're asking for.
I think the community board will, as part of our delegation review, which we need to do for our community boards, this will be one of the issues that gets raised. It really comes out of the frustration that by the time we get the start work notice, it's too late to have any meaningful influence over the design. So if you think of places like Peterborough Street, if you think of some of the other streets, we need at an early stage to actually understand what the detailed designs being proposed are, so that we can give local feedback and advocate for our community. And we're not being given that opportunity. So some you might just put back as they were, some you might want change. But who's making that call at the moment is not the elected members, not the local community. It's this kind of group that we don't have any visibility of. So we have to look at a different way of doing it, so that we don't get into these frustrating situations.
Phil?
Look, I can understand where Yanni is coming from, but I think that if all the SCIRT projects were to go to community boards, that would really slow the whole process down, so it could become quite unworkable. I agree with Yanni that there needs to be a stronger governance from council around knowledge about the SCIRT projects, and that this is perhaps where it should come. But I would be very reluctant to, and I don't think, I'd be reluctant to support a decision that in fact would change the process completely, the SCIRT process.
David? Paul?
The call on a lot of the roading projects is
Different David.
with Sarah, rather than with us. But I replied to Yanni on the Councillor Johansson on the Peterborough Street when it was being done, and they were replacing it. It's on their 15-year project, so it's actually down there. And I know there's been a bit of to and froing on that particular street. But what we may be able to do, and I'm not quite sure, I could talk to Sarah and see whether they get out what they project to be maybe a 2-year forward program, so there's the opportunity to have that timely conversation out there. The issue is that you'll look at the delegations to SCIRT through that, the actual call is sitting with Sarah, not with ourselves on some of those, but we leave it and I'll see whether I get a transport.
Well, let's have a further conversation about it, because this was the experience very early on in the piece. I mean, brand new mayor sitting there reading these papers and thinking, why the hell are we making a decision about spending money on a bigger pipe, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then it occurred to me partway through, and largely off the issues that Councillor Johansson has raised, which is that when SCIRT are looking at the potential for betterment, and they come to us with a proposal that there's a betterment allocation from the fund for that, which is just a borrowing facility. I think people think there's money sitting there waiting to be spent. Then I get the impression that they look under the ground, you know, so that when they're looking under the ground, they're very clear about what they want to propose by way of betterment, because it will improve the infrastructure of the city. But they rarely look above the ground. So when we're looking at roading, when we're looking at neighbouring facilities, and this came up with the tannery, you know, that you don't look around while you're doing, for example, one thing. You might want to be looking at a parking plan, you want a transport management plan around what is a really dangerous corner, you might want to think about access to the river, all of these other things which don't fit within the SCIRT budget, but actually are exactly the sort of things that I would have thought that the betterment allocation was always designed for. So, you know, so maybe that's what we should get out of this, is that where we can see that there's, and by looking forward that 2 years, where we can see that there might be opportunities to do things in a better way, and there might be an allocation from the Betterment Fund. They're the things that we want to have in front of the council, as well as the bigger pipe. So does that make sense? Yep.
You are quite right. In fact, you've actually brought up exactly what we're talking about. It is a place like the tannery. There are groups out there that actually have worked incredibly hard post-earthquake to think of how their street could be better. And I think it's really interfacing with those groups and with the community board and some of the aspirations we have for certain areas. It doesn't have to be right across the board. We don't need to know about every single street.
So that means that SCIRT's got to be part of that process. And even though they have delegated authority to do various things, and the chief executive's delegated to make calls on various things, it might be better to think like a little bit more outside the square for some of these projects, and say, well, actually, let's look at the betterment opportunities for the area rather than just looking at the horizontal infrastructure.
And I'm sorry, I haven't attended one of the community boards with SCIRT people there at the moment, but I always understand they meet quarterly with the community boards, or they've been doing circuits round. Now, I'm not quite sure what's on the agenda, but let me talk to Duncan and see whether we can actually bring that conversation in. Obviously, it then has to come back if there's a significant betterment. It will have to come back to you. There's no money sitting out there, and so, like you say, it's actually committee borrowing rather than whatever. But some of them...
SCIRT is very good at briefing about what it's doing. It's not set up to engage with the community boards or the community about whether to do it or not. And that was the mistake that we made with the wastewater, the pressure sewer system. So, yeah.
It is designed as a production line.
Correct.
It goes in and it comes in and it produces, because we had
and it has done an exceptionally good job at that. Yeah. But this is where, I mean, and what the court has reminded us is that our legal obligations to consult with our communities is not overridden by the creation of the SCIRT model. Yeah. All right. So, so Dave, you'll come back to us with some ideas around that. Yep, excellent.
It's really important that the cycleways, the master plans, and where you've got
the natural environment recovery program.
So they're the three things that seem to be missing. So what we get when we get the quarterly brief, we get a huge list of projects on a big map with just one line. We don't get any detail of what the actual project is, of how much is being spent, of what the proposed design is going to be. So because we don't get that, we get a start work notice 2 days before the work starts. By that stage, it's too late. So, you know, if you look at Humphreys Drive along the coastal edge, if you look at Ferry Road through where we've got a main plan, master plan for Main Road, and you just see stuff going back as it is, it just, we've repeatedly raised this with SCIRT for the last 2.5 years through the community board.
And this is what I'm saying, this is not SCIRT's business. You know, it is our business.
Sarah's business.
No, it's our business in conjunction with Sarah. We've got 3 agencies involved as clients of the SCIRT. The SCIRT does not have an independent decision-making role. It delivers, you
I
know.
think there was a really good Auditor General report into SCIRT, and it was really critical of the lack of strategic direction that was being provided to it by Sarah and by authority. So I'd really like to know
That's us.
what steps,
We're the authorities.
yeah,
Yeah.
what steps were taken to address that concern.
It's NZTA, Christchurch City Council and Sarah. And Sarah have the final sign-off on projects, you know, in terms of the horizontal infrastructure cost share.
Can we look to some sort of, and I think this is our role, provide leadership by way of overall coordination? I take a case where we were at a Medway Street meeting the other day, where it would be good to have coordination over SCIRT, Enable and our arborists. So it's to have a joined up approach with the residents so that, you know, you're not redigging up streets. SCIRT's going one way across the city, Enable's going the other. We're trying to do trees. So I think if we could take the lead and actually, it's the coordination which would save a whole lot of hassle and take communities with us.
I think this issue has enabled us to articulate what is the gap, so thank you for that. So would someone like to move that the Chief Executive's report be received? That's Paul Lonsdale, seconded Glenn Livingston.